Well, Bio30s, this is video 4 in our genetics series, and we are going to learn a little bit now about what is a test cross. So, for instance, here is an example. We have a white sheep and a black sheep. Now, this white sheep has the dominant trait. So, white is dominant, and we see that it is white, but we don't know, is this sheep homozygous dominant? Or is it heterozygous? We can't tell by looking, by inspection, by just that phenotype alone, right? We know that as soon as you have a dominant allele, you get the dominant trait. So how on earth are we able to decide, is this individual homozygous dominant or heterozygous? How do we solve this problem? Well, the answer is we're going to mate her with the recessive. So black is the recessive in sheep wool color. We know that the black sheep is recessive, so has to have two recessive alleles, has to be little w, little w. What is the female? Don't know. That's what we're trying to find. So when we do a cross of the white sheep by the black sheep, we have to look at the offspring. So if you get any black offspring, then you know that the parent, the mom, the white, the unknown, had to be heterozygous. Why? Because one copy, one little w recessive allele had to come from mom, and the other little w had to come from dad. So here, half of the offspring are black, the recessive, and the other half are white. Why is that? Because the mom had a recessive allele. She was heterozygous. On the other hand, when you do the other test cross, look at the offspring. All are white. There is no black sheep in this cross. Well, why is that? The reason is because the mom had no little w allele. She was not heterozygous. She had to be homozygous dominant. Big W, big W. So a test cross is a way to find out the unknown, but the dominant, and you just do it by simply crossing it with the recessive, the known parent. So here's another example. We have purple flowers. Purple we know to be dominant. So the purple flower is big P something. We don't know, is it big P or big P little p? Is it homozygous or heterozygous? So what do? We made it with the recessive, the white. We know what the white is. The reason why it's white is because it has two little p's. So if we get any white offspring, here's the example here. Wow, look, there's some white offspring. Half are white, half are purple. Why is that? Because the parent plant, the one that is purple, had to be carrying the recessive allele. Okay, so as you're working your way through these questions, please make sure that you are following the steps. And the steps involve you starting out by writing a legend. So here's an example. You're doing a monohybrid cross, and we're looking now at guinea pigs, and we're looking at the color of their hair or fur. So we're going to cross a white guinea pig and a heterozygous black. So we set up our legend first. So we are saying that white and it's heterozygous. That indicates that the black is the dominant. And so big B is black and white is dominant recessive little b. Then decide what the parents are, right? So the white parent is the recessive little b. Heterozygous. Why is it heterozygous? Because it has a dominant allele. It has one dominant allele that gives it the dominant phenotype. Then set up your gametes. So the white parent, recessive, only has recessive alleles, and the heterozygous has one dominant and one recessive. Once you are done that, you set up your Punnett square and fill it in. So then you decide, well, here, big B, black, big B, black, little b, white, little b, white. What's my genotype ratio, the letters? Well, there are two big B, little b, two heterozygous to two little b, homozygous recessive. Is that lowest terms? No, I reduce it. 1 to 1 is my lowest terms. So what are the phenotypes, the physical appearances? What do these guinea pigs look like? Well, there's two black guinea pigs to two white guinea pigs. Again, is that lowest terms? Ask yourself, can I reduce that? Yeah, if I divide by 2, now I've got one black to one white. Okay, so every time you're doing genetics question, please make sure that you are completing all these steps. Do some practice, and then you will be able to check your answers on the answer key. And then once you're confident, you'll be able to do this week's assignment. Okay, next we're going to talk about sex-linked inheritance. So this is a different kind of inheritance than what we've been talking about. And the guy who kind of is famous for this, Thomas Hunt Morgan, and he studied fruit flies. And you're probably thinking to yourself, who would want to study those god-awful fruit flies, those Drosophila melanogaster? There's actually a lot of really good reasons for doing that. You can study them because they're easy to house. They're very small, they have a short lifespan, and they multiply very rapidly, many generations in a short amount of time. And they're easy to tell male and female apart, and they're very simple. They only have 3 chromosomes. They're 2N, their diploid number is 6. So what was he investigating? Well, the trait, what he was looking at was red and white eyes in fruit flies, Drosophila. The wild type, the dominant, is the red eyes, and the recessive was the little beady white eyes. So how did he come up with this new type of inheritance? Well, he got some really weird results. And so he took the dominant trait, in this case, the dominant phenotype, that is the red eyes. So here's a female with red eyes. And he multiplied, crossbred, mated with the recessive, the white-eyed male. And as you can see, there were no white eyes in the offspring, because again, red is dominant to white. And so the red dominant allele masked the recessive white, and none of the offspring had those white eyes. So then what did he do? Okay, once again, you can do this in fruit flies, but not in people. He took some of the red-eyed female offspring, the dominant trait, and mated them from this F1 generation to make the F2, and he took some red-eyed males. So here's a red-eyed male, red-eyed female, dominant trait times dominant trait, and what happened? He got some white-eyed males. But it was only the sons, only the boys, only the males. So there were nobody at all in this generation in the F1 with the white eyes. The recessive skipped a generation, and it showed up again in the F2. So the grandkids were having some white eyes, and we did not see that at all in our offspring generation. So he thought, well, maybe it's on the Y. I mean, if guys are getting it, right, that would make sense. But that's not true, because when he did a test cross, he actually got females with white eyes. So how can that be? Remember, males are XY, females are XX. They have no Y. So how can they be getting this recessive trait if it's on the Y chromosome? Well, they can't be. So it's not on the Y. So then he thought, well, maybe it's on the X chromosome. Okay, well, how can that be then? How can an X-linked gene, X-linked inheritance occur? Well, let's think about it. A female has 2 X's. One comes from mom, right, the egg at fertilization, and one comes from dad, the sperm at fertilization. What are males? Well, males are XY. Who are they getting their X from? That's right. They get their X from mom. They get their Y from their dad. That's what makes them a male. But their X is coming from their mom. So notice they don't have a second X chromosome. So if the female had a dominant allele on one X and a recessive on the other, the dominant would mask the recessive. She'd be fine. She'd be normal. She'd have red eyes. But if the male doesn't have a second X chromosome, if he receives the recessive allele on the X, he gets the recessive trait. So we tend to see a lot of what we call maternal inheritance here. Mom passing the trait on to her male offspring because she is passing her X chromosome on to her male offspring. Dad is giving the boy his Y so that he has that sex chromosome Y. Now, just a reminder, these are sex-linked. They're X-linked. They're on the X chromosome. Males cannot be heterozygous for any of these X-linked traits. They either express, they get, they show, they have that dominant trait. So X big RY, that male has red eyes. Why? Because he has that dominant allele. He doesn't have a second X chromosome like a female does that he can mask a second chromosome. If he gets the dominant allele, he gets the dominant trait. What about if he gets the recessive trait? How does that come about? Well, obviously it's because he receives that recessive allele from his mom. So if he's getting a recessive allele, that's what he gets. He's not got a second allele from dad. His second allele from dad is Y, not an X. He's got no way of masking this recessive. And so he gets the recessive trait. He either expresses the dominant or expresses the recessive. So can females get X-linked traits? Yeah, they sure can. But it's going to be a lot more rare for a female than a male. Why? Because here's the example. X little r, X little r. This is a white-eyed female. She gets one X little r from mom, and she gets one X little r from dad. So she has to get 2 copies of the recessive in order to get the sex-linked recessive. So her mom either has to be a carrier, here's the X little r, the recessive, the affected allele she's passing on to her daughter, or mom herself is going to be affected with those white eyes. And obviously dad must be affected as well because he has that recessive allele. Okay, so next and hopefully last video is going to be on how to do these sex-linked questions and some notes to make sure that you are following to do well on your X-linked, your sex-linked on the X chromosome. All right, that's it for now. Be waiting for our last video in this series. Until then, take care.